So you should already have your rubric glued into the third page of your notebook, which is literally you count 1, 2, and on the third, there it should be. So with that in mind, if you haven't already, you're going to fold your line foldable in half. And on the bottom here, on the back, you're going to write your first name, your last name, your class code, and today's date. Your class code is whatever block you are and whatever day it is. So if you are second block on B day, you'd be 2B. If you are fourth block on A day, you'd be 4A. That simple. After you folded your paper, you're going to take scissors and you're going to cut the front part so that you get flaps. You want to get these flaps. All right. So next up, so no matter which one of my classes you are in, my canvas looks relatively the same. The image will be different here, but if you scroll down, there's a few different ways we can get to this. You can go through modules or go to slides. I'm going to go to slides. I'm going to click on the Elements of Art tab here. So you will not be writing word for word. Do not write word for word. So line is a path of a point moving through space. It can be 2D or 3D, descriptive or implied. Descriptive is what you're normally used to. You see it in your writing, your drawing, all of that. Implied is when you don't see the line. So line example. So it's when there's a line without there actually being a line. So if you look at like this feather, there's no physical line showing you this feather. It's just dots, and your mind tells you there's a line. Same here. Actual line is you put a real line around it. An implied line is you don't really draw a line, but it's there. Mentally, it's an invisible line. So for your definition, oops, sorry. For your definition, I'm trying to pause this. Hold on. So for your definition, you're going to keep it super, super simple. It is going to be a path of a point moving through space. That is literally, if I take, here is a point, here is a space, here is that point moving through a space, and it creates a line. It's that simple. So that will be your definition on the left. And then on the right, you need to have at least 3 examples of line and make sure you label them. When I'm grading, I'm going to be looking for those labels. If they're not there, I will take off points. This needs to be neat. It would also be a good idea to have the 3 line directions: vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and then label them as line directions. All right, so next up, we're actually a skip shape, go to color. And by the way, for line, these are the 3 ways that it connects to math: is parallel, perpendicular, and intersecting lines. So for color, it's the hue that is produced when light reflects on an object or off an object. You have your primary colors, your reds, your yellow, and your blues. These are 3 colors that make up all of the colors. You cannot make them. Primary means first. It is very important you know that. Secondary are your green, your orange, and your violet. They're made by mixing the 3 primary colors together. So red and yellow make orange, red and blue make violet, blue and yellow make a green, and secondary means second. Please make sure you remember primary means first, secondary means second. Intermediate or tertiary, You could call it either or. I prefer intermediate personally. That is 6 colors: blue green, blue violet, red orange, yellow green, and yellow orange. You get these by mixing a primary and secondary color that are next to each other on the color wheel. And if you notice, all of them have the primary color first. It is always primary first, secondary second. Intermediate or tertiary means in between. And since they come between the primary and secondary color on the color wheel, it makes sense. Complementary are 2 colors directly across from each other on the color wheel. They create a high contrast when used together. Examples are red and green, blue and orange, yellow and violet. Analogous colors are 3 to 5 colors next to each other on the color wheel. So one example is blue, blue, green, green. Another example is red, red, violet, and violet, or even blue, violet, and red. That didn't sound right. Blue, violet, blue, and red. There we go. I think blue, violet, and blue. I'm sorry. Warm colors that make you think of warm things like the sun, fire. These are your reds, your yellows, and oranges. It doesn't just have to be a primary, secondary, or intermediate. It can be anything that falls into those families, those color families. Cool colors are colors that make you think of cool things like water, ice, and grass. Those are your blues, greens, and violets. Once again, anything that falls into the blues, greens, and violets families. 2 that are not on here are your neutral colors, which are your blacks, your browns, your grays, your whites, your beiges, things like that. And then you also have your monochromatic. Monochromatic is basically, say if I was wanting to do a picture or painting with just blue, I would take blue and have different amounts of black added to it, different amounts of white, different amounts of gray. And then with all those shades, tints, and tones of blue, along with the original hue of blue, I would make my painting with just that. There'd be no other colors outside of that. So for color, all you need to write is hue that is produced when light reflects off an object. Primary, so in parentheses, primary, secondary, intermediate, complementary, analogous, warm color, cool color, neutral, and monochromatic. Then over here, you'll just write primary and secondary and create the 3 primary colors under primary and 3 secondary under secondary. Next up, we're going to go back and do shape. So shape. Flat enclosed area that are 2-dimensional or 2D. They cannot stand on their own. We have geometric or are found in math. Those are your squares, circles, and rectangles, etc. Then organic and freeform. These are found in nature and are all other shapes that do not fall into geometric. So for your definition, it's 2D flat enclosed area cannot stand on their own. Geometric are found in math, organic / freeform are found in nature, and all other shapes. Then for your example, you're literally going to just put a line down the middle, put geometric on one side, freeform / organic on the other. Draw 2 examples of geometric and make sure you label them, and then draw 2 examples of freeform organic. Next up is form. Form are 3-dimensional, 3D. They have height, width, and depth, so volume, and can stand on their own. Examples are spheres, cones, triangular prisms, rectangular prisms, cubes, etc. Here's what a few of those look like. So for form, you're going to put 3D, have volume. If you don't know what makes up volume, then you need to make sure you list height, depth, and width. and can stand on their own. And then over here, you're going to draw two forms. I did 2 cubes so you could see the two different ways you can really draw it. I don't care which one you do, make sure you label it and make sure it's neat. And then I did a triangular prism. All right, next up is value. Value is the lightness or darkness of color. This is where your tint, tone, and shade come in. Tint is when you add white to a hue, so color. Tone is when you add gray to a hue, and shade is when you add black to a hue. A value scale is a system of organizing the values. It consists of anywhere from like 5 to 9 values, ranging from white to black or from lightest to darkness with your color, with the shades of gray in between or the shades in between. The shades of gray or like your in between shades, if you're using a color, make up the meat of a drawing and help to create the illusion of depth in 3 dimension. So what you're going to do is for your definition, you're going to do lightness or darkness of a color, and then you got to write out the definition for tint, tone, and shade. Yes, that is shade. I did leave my A out. I'm going to correct it. And then you'll draw a little box like this over here on the right. So for this, it's best to use a pencil, a wooden pencil. And what you do is you'll leave this white. You'll come in here to where on the dark side, and you'll make this your darkest dark that you can make it using the edge of the pencil. Come in, do your next one. Obviously, that's not dark enough yet, but I'm gonna jump to here real quick and make this one slightly darker than the first one. Make this one darker than the last one. And then push this to be darker, but not as dark as the last one. So that's essentially what you will do for that. Just make it neat. Next up, we have texture. It's the way a surface feels or how it looks like it would feel. Actual or real texture is, say, if you touch someone's hair, it's how, if you touch it and it feels how it looks, then that's real actual textural shows. Like if you look at someone's hair and you're like, oh, their hair is gonna be soft, then, and when you touch it, it's actually soft, then that's actual real texture. Implied and visual is when something is drawn / made to look like a texture, but does not feel like that texture. So if I draw a picture of a dog and I'd make them to look fluffy and soft, but if I touch the paper, it's still gonna feel like paper. So it's implied. It's a visual trick. So what we'll write for this is that first sentence there. Wrong. The way a surface feels or how it looks like it would feel. And then you'll do actual / real. and you'll put physically versus implied / visual drawing on a surface to make it like another texture. So for that, like I said, and I'll show it. Let me go ahead. So the way a surface feels or how it looks like it would feel, actual and real is the physical touching of the object, and then implied and visual is drawing in on a surface to make it look like another texture. And for this, you can kind of look up whatever you want. I am partial to making my stuff look like a rug. So I'm gonna come in, kind of do like one of those rug rings. I'm only gonna do this much right now. I'm gonna come in. Generally with texture, you end up using quite a bit of value to make it look right. Um, so there's that. And I could do like this. So you have like that. Or you could do, like I said, you could pretty much do anything. If you want to try to make it look like wood or like a tree, just take your time. This one's gonna take more time than the others just because you might not have done this before, and that's okay. Obviously, this isn't great, but I'm trying to get you the right idea. Like if I was doing a tree. Next up, these are all implied and visual because if we reach out and touch it, it would feel like our screen. So next up is space. It refers to the distance between or the area around and within shapes, forms, colors, and lines. Space can be positive or negative. It also includes background, foreground, and middle ground. So we have positive and negative. Positive space refers to the main focus of a picture, while the negative space refers to the background or the space around the main focus. Foreground, middle ground, background. Foreground of the composition or your artwork is the visual plane that appears the closest to you, while the background is the plane that is the furthest, and then the middle ground is everything in between. Excuse me. So for space, we're gonna kind of skip out on most of this and just go straight to positive, negative. Positive is the main focus, while negative is the space around it. So with that in mind, this is positive and negative. At this point, like on this one, I'm seeing the faces as the positive, so I did it as white versus here. the negative, which was the negative over here, these are the exact same. I get it, negative turned into the positive, and it looks more like something that holds like a candle or something, or cake. So positive, negative is just dealing with your space in your picture. Foreground. Area. Closest. Background. Area is the furthest. Middle ground is everything in between. Okay. So positive, negative. Positive is the main focus, while negative is the space around it. Foreground area is closest. Background area is the furthest. Middle ground is everything in between. So over here, what you could do is, and draw this neatly. I'm just kind of rushing right now. I'm going to make this my middle here. So if I were to draw a ball, this would be my positive, this would be my negative. Versus over here, if I wanted to make this the negative and all the background the positive. And then foreground, middle ground, background. When you draw that out, you have one examples, nice, neat examples of both of these. These two items are my foreground. I'm just gonna put an F. That is my middle ground. So I'm gonna put an M. This is my background, so I'll put a B. So the further something goes, the smaller it gets, the less detail it has, until it's basically nothing. All right. So was that everything? Yep. So at this point, you should have definitions for all your elements of art. They should all be done neatly, much neater than this. And if you have any questions, let me know.